Welcome to the 8th edition of JLU International Festival of Media, hosted and curated by the Faculty of Journalism and Communication. I'm Ritik Khare and I'm with Stanley Johny, the International Affairs Editor of The Hindu and the award-winning author of The Original Sin.
Thanks, Ritik. Thanks for having me here.
So my first question was, in your coverage of the conflict, did you ever feel any pressure or any criticism of adhering to a certain narrative or a certain banner of that sort?
So there is no pressure. I haven't faced any pressure as such, but I had certain intimidating experiences while reporting from Israel. So I remember that in 2018, I think, when the Prime Minister of India visited Palestinian territories. So I was in Ramallah, and then while coming back, see, Ramallah is the headquarters of the Palestinian Authority, which is in the West Bank. And West Bank is occupied by the Israeli troops. And to get out of Ramallah, basically it's not easy because the Palestinian taxis are not allowed to come to Israel proper. And Israelis will not come to the Palestinian territory either, because I need to take my return flight from Tel Aviv. So for that, I need to get a cab from Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, which is also an Israeli annexed territory, Israeli occupied territory. And the cab will come, which means an Arab cab driver will come to Ramallah, pick me up, and then take the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv highway and then drop me at the airport. And before the Tel Aviv airport, there is a massive checkpoint. So even before that, Kalandia checkpoint, I was stopped and I was asked all kind of questions because the Israelis wanted to know why did I go to the West Bank. And at the Tel Aviv checkpoint, basically before the airport, I was checked, I was stopped, my passport was taken away, I was put in a dark room for some 20 odd minutes. So that was kind of a very intimidating experience. I had written about it in the book, I had also written about it in the Hindu. Because you are in a different country and you don't even have your passport, your baggage was taken away. So I faced that kind of experiences. But otherwise, no, I mean, if you write a story, some people might not like the story. They might call you and then tell you that, why did you write this? Why didn't you write that? Etc., etc. Such calls and messages I get, but otherwise there is no major pressure as such, no.
So though they may come from very different ends of the spectrum, but like writers and historians like Benny Morris and Norman J. Finkelstein have been like instrumental in shaping the narrative. So how do you see their contributions?
Yeah, I listen to them. I listen to, I mean, especially Norman is a very argumentative, fact-based commentator. But his views are a bit controversial as well. I also listen to John Mearsheimer quite a lot because I like his realist school of thought, and I listen to Israeli commentators and also Israeli new historians. For example, what was his name? Who's in the UK? Sorry, I can't recollect the name, but the new historians, Israeli historians, Ilan Pape, Professor Pape, because the new historians played a major role in unveiling basically what happened when the State of Israel was created, because until 1960s and 1970s, nobody knew the basic facts about the creation of the State of Israel, about the number of Palestinians who were displaced, about the brutalities of Nakba. So the new historians played a major role in it, and Professor Pape has written extensively about it. So I think the historians and the commentators play a major role. For example, if you talk about John Mearsheimer, especially in the United States, because in the United States it's very difficult to find voices such as Professor Mearsheimer's when it comes to Israel, because mostly the mainstream media follow the Israeli line, and whether it is the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, even in the UK, The Economist, the BBC. So they have a particular narrative about the conflict. But people like Pape, who is an Israeli Jewish historian, or Nemo Finkelstein is also Jewish if I am not mistaken, or Lowenstein, who recently wrote, he's an Australian Jewish journalist, and Lowenstein has written about the Palestinian Lab, which is also a fantastic book. So I think such voices are important, and they continue to play a major role in shaping public opinions, because otherwise the mainstream media follow a particularly biased narrative about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So you actually have to look up to the new historians, alternative voices, commentators, and realists like Professor John Mearsheimer to get a better picture of what's happening in the region.
So you mentioned in your book that Israel-Palestine, or the issue of Israel, is not just a foreign policy issue for America, but it's also a domestic issue.
Yeah.
So how do you think America is reconciling with that aspect?
So Israel has always been a domestic issue in the United States, because sometimes if you look at it from a foreign policy point of view, America's continued support for Israel doesn't make complete sense if you are a student of foreign policy. For example, you take the case of the Joe Biden administration. Biden came to power saying that human rights would be at the center of his foreign policy. Then Biden ended up supporting Israel's war on Gaza, even when Israel killed 50,000 Palestinians in 15 months, right? And there was no meaningful pressure from the Biden administration. So I was asking this question myself: why a democratic administration is so tolerant of Israel's excessive use of violence against the Palestinians? So the answer is that you can look at it from two different ways. One is that some Americans find strategic merit in Israel because Israel is an ally in a region which is otherwise, an Arab, Persian, or the Turkic region. And Israel is a stable and steady American ally, and the United States wants such an ally in a region like West Asia to maintain its hegemony over the region. And the second element is what realists like Professor Mearsheimer or Stephen Walt would tell you about the lobby. Because these two wrote their famous article called The Israeli Lobby in 2005 in London Review of Books, which was later converted into a book called The Israeli Lobby. So Mearsheimer would argue that the lobby is very powerful in America. I'm not only talking about IPAC. IPAC is only one element of it. The lobby is powerful in the Capitol Hill. The lobby is powerful in the executive branch of the US government. The lobby is powerful in the universities and the media. So it is very difficult for American policymakers, including the president, to basically go against the whims of the lobby, because the lobby is extremely powerful. So that's why you don't see any meaningful change in American administrations, irrespective of who is in power, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. So there is continuity in the foreign policy. And this is happening despite internal pressure, because, for example, you look at the protests in Columbia and other universities recently, right? There were massive ground-level protests against the Biden administration's support for Israel's war in Gaza. But the US government didn't blink. And when it comes to the Trump administration, they are actually going after all the protesters. It is a new kind of McCarthyism. If you are criticizing Israel, the government can come after you in the United States. So you see this, the influence of the lobby is so powerful that sometimes goes even against the will of America's own voters. Look at the case of Iran, because the United States, Obama administration negotiated a deal with the Iranians in 2015, and it was Trump who sabotaged the deal in 2018. And now the United States and Iran are closer than ever to a war. And this war isn't, even right-wing commentators like Tucker Carlson would tell you that a war with Iran is not in America's interest. So the question is then why the United States is so keen on taking on Iran? The answer is it's on behalf of Israel. So these questions are always there. So that's why I say that Israel is not only a foreign policy issue.
What difference do you see between the Likud and the Labour parties in Israel, and how do those dynamics play out?
Labour at least had a peace bloc. It was Yitzhak Rabin who signed the Oslo Agreement. And Shimon Peres is also from Labour, who wanted to continue the Oslo process. Likud on the other side is a right-wing party, and Likud has never committed itself to making peace with the Palestinians, especially after Netanyahu came to power. And if you go read Likud's charter, original charter, so everybody today would tell you that would tell you about the Hamas slogan, from the river to the sea will be a Palestinian state, and their argument is that this is a call for genocide of the Jews. And Hamas initially actually was very anti-Semitic, there is no doubt about it. But interestingly, if you go read about the Likud Charter is also saying the land from the river to the sea is the state of Israel. So that's how Likud looks at it. So it's a right-wing party, right? But today's Israel's polity is much more complicated, because Labour is next to nothing today. How many lawmakers Labour has? They don't have even 10 lawmakers in the current Knesset. And Likud has 30 plus. Likud is the single largest party. And then the second and third largest parties in Israel are Yesh Atid and Benny Gantz's Blue and White. And these two are right of center parties. Likud is a right-wing parties. These two are right of center party. And then you have right religious parties. For example, you have the Shas, you have the United Torah Judaism, and then you have the Jewish Power, and you have the settler party. Jewish Power is one of the settler parties. And then you have politicians like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. And Smotrich and Ben-Gvir are far-right politicians. They are settler politicians. And then they are right of Likud. So what you witness today is that Israeli polity, which in the 1960s and 1970s were balanced between center left Labour Party and a center right Likud party, is now balanced between a right-wing Likud party and far-right parties. So Israeli polity has clearly shifted to the far right. So now you have the Netanyahu government, which is a far-right government. And why Netanyahu keeps doing what he is doing? Because he knows that if he makes peace with Hamas, his government will collapse. He will be out of power. And if he is out of power, he is facing a lot of cases in Israel, right? So it is also in his own personal interest that he wants to continue fighting in Gaza, so that his government will survive, at least for the foreseeable future. So his position will also be strengthened. And this is even Chuck Schumer, the US senator, said this, that Netanyahu is prolonging the war for his own political survival, right? So the domestic polity, I think, continues to play a major role in the conflict today.
So do you see any parallels with the Republican Party and Democratic Party to Likud and Labour?
So basically, in the United States, the Democrats are still a very powerful political establishment, even though now the Republicans are there in power. But in Israel, Labour is finished. I don't foresee a scenario where Labour will come back to power in Israel, not in the foreseeable future. So if Netanyahu falls, the best possible chance you have is a Yesh Atid government led by Yesh Atid leader is, again, sorry, I lost the name, and then, or Benny Gantz. Yeah? So that is the best possible scenario you have. So this is completely different from the US scenario. But in the United States, what you can say is that whether it is the Republican government or a Democratic government, you don't see any major difference in America's policy towards Israel. Because Joe Biden continued to supply weapons, continued to support the war, and under Trump, the support is much more blatant. You will see a difference only in degree, but you don't see any radical difference whether it is Democrats or Republicans in the United States. So in Israel, what you could see that even if Netanyahu is voted out tomorrow, you might get a center-right government, but that also would not mean that there would be any meaningful difference in Israel's approach towards the Palestinians.
The foreign policy, I think.
Yeah, foreign, yes.
So your book mentioned Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven. So are there any other films or media that you think that particularly captures this conflict in a meaningful way?
So Israel-Palestine, no, I haven't seen any major Western production. I watched Palestinian, I watched even the recent documentary that got the Oscar. I watched the Palestinian productions. Also Iranian.
Have you seen Waltz with Bashir?
I haven't.
It's a great film.
It is? No? Then I will watch it. Lawrence of Arabia I have watched it many times to understand basically at that period of,
Do you think it distorts history at all, Lawrence of Arabia?
Yeah, maybe, because that is basically lionizing the role Lawrence played. So in that case,
like that white savior.
Yeah, exactly. The white savior complex is there. That you can see. I mean, that you can make that case with most of these Hollywood productions. But I don't go for movie for facts. I basically go for movies for that visual impact. So I get facts from history books. I depend on historians, and then movies will give you some kind of a visual language. That's what I look forward. So yeah, I mean, with regard to Palestinian conflict, I haven't watched anything, but I like Body of Lies.
Body of Lies.
That's again a Ridley Scott movie. So yeah, DiCaprio movie. So Body of Lies, I think, is bringing basically the Jordanian intelligence agent in the movie. That basically talks about the complexities of the region from a secular point of view, without taking that pro-Western bias. That movie discusses basically the politics in the region. So I like that movie.
Even I think Kingdom of Heaven doesn't take sides.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah.
There's a very good dialogue in it. Like no one can lay claim, but all can lay claim. Which is, I think, very radical for America.
And the king, the leper king, is a philosopher of the in the movie. He comes out as a great man.
And how they, like Salahuddin, and how they interact with
each other.
There's mutual respect.
Yes, of course.
Thank you, sir, for your insights. For more of such videos with leading journalists, keep watching Lakecity Live.